good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're on for another installment of Creative Perceptions. I don't really like doing seasons, so we're going to just keep the episodes rolling. But today I have a special guest. I have one of my friends, my brothers. We grew up in the same neighborhood together and got to experience walks of life, man, and life together. Another HBCU graduate, one of the best HBCUs in Florida and I'll go ahead the southeastern coast, so to speak. I have my brother. He's a former D1 athlete, a coach, a mentor, a brother, a friend, a smart, well-rounded dude, an entrepreneur, great guy all around. Mr. Dondre Yon, welcome to Creative Perceptions, man. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate it. How you doing, Zach? It's been a long time, literal long time coming that we
Yes,
get to do stuff like this. So I really
man.
appreciate you having me. It's a great being here, and let's have a good conversation. Let's do it, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for hopping on, man. And definitely, I don't take it for granted, man. I know we're both punching the clock and trying to figure out how to punch our own clock, if that makes sense from an entrepreneur
hmm
standpoint. So, all right, let's talk about it. From Clarksburg, Maryland, or from Maryland, so to speak. Tell me how, I again grew up with you, went to baseball games with you. Tell me how, as you grew up through baseball, and you're going through high school, what's the mindset in high school? Are you automatically thinking I'm playing baseball in college? Or are you automatically thinking I may or may not? Because oftentimes, like, correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes we play a sport from K all the way through 12, and you're just like, yeah, that was fun doing it. As you see a lot of students that are now entering college or about to consider college, they're like, yeah, I don't want to play sports in
hmm
college. I'm tapped out. What was your thought process when you were in high school going to Clarksburg High School?
Oh man, so for me, I knew probably like it's weird because it started with video games. So one of my favorite video games growing up was the one and only NCAA baseball game they made like in 2006, 2007. I want to say it was '07. And I thought that was so cool. And that was kind of my introduction to college baseball and kind of where I kind of learned like like different programs and things. And so I just knew I like baseball. I was like, well, why not? Like I thought in my mind at that age, I thought like you do this to get to that level, right? Like, or you do this to get to the professional level. So
Right.
walking into high school, day one, I knew my goal was like, hey, I want to play Division I baseball, period. Like full stop. It was just day one. I knew it, and it was kind of interesting because I remember when we had baseball tryouts, and I had kind of had mapped out in my mind like, all right, if you want to play Division I, you need to be playing starting on varsity day one as a freshman. You need to be all conference. You need to be all these different accolades and different under the sun and to hit these different numbers. And I
Mhm.
remember telling it, and there was a senior, and I won't mention his name, but he was a senior on
Mhm.
the team. And I said to him, like, yeah, he's like, are you going to baseball team? I said, yeah, I'm gonna be on varsity freshman year. It's like I'm playing Division I baseball. And he looked at me like, are you crazy? And I was kind of like, I looked at him back, like, are you crazy? Right. Like I thought I was very clear with what I said.
Right.
So like, the story didn't quite shake out that way, but it was always a mission in my head. And then the more individuals kind of like, I don't want to say told me I couldn't, but they gave me reasons why I couldn't
Mhm.
instead of giving me reasons why I could.
Right.
It made me kind of just be like, well, who are you? Like,
Absolutely.
who are you? And so that was one of the big driving forces. And I think the key point, and I kind of hit on it just real quickly, is like for me, what really solidified it was I think my sophomore year when things weren't necessarily going well, got hurt my knee, had surgery, and then my grandfather passed away.
Mhm.
And our thing was always kind of baseball.
Right. Yep.
So I remember that was kind of like, nah, you gotta go one left or right. You either gonna push super hard for this
Mhm.
and just if you're wrong, you're wrong,
Mhm.
or you're kind of gonna just fade into the background. And that like once he had passed away, baseball was our thing. So it kind of pushed me in the direction of like, no, you gotta figure out just one way out of the thousands of ways to make this happen. And bet on it all. So that's kind of what the thought process was going before high school, what it was my freshman year in high school, and then what the key moment was that really like anchored it in and kind of really pushed me even further down that path.
Right. So I like how you talked about the journey, and your grandpa would be very proud of you, man. So shout out to you. So as you kind of talk about, setting an expectation and setting a standard coming to high school, and I feel like sports, maybe high school through college, I feel like we missed that level of intensity and just that level of confidence. Like you should aspire to be and say the greatest things, and people are, I don't want to say offended or threatened, I guess threatened, so to speak, with
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
like that.
Yep.
Um, what because I do remember vaguely, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I do remember Clarksburg. There were not even just Clarksburg. There were times where I know I would watch you play baseball, and I knew nothing about baseball, but you and your father like taught me the game. Like I knew
Mhm.
it. I couldn't talk it like y'all could, but I knew the game because of y'all.
Yeah.
Shout out to y'all. But there were times where there were clearly players that were not as good as you, or it wasn't even close, but because of who the coach was, or because of the circuit, and they were on the team the year before, or you just
Mhm.
joined, however that works out.
Mhm.
When you're at Clarksburg, what was the journey like? Like you talked about your sophomore year and hurting your knee, but like freshman year, like how did the varsity thing shake up? Were you JV freshman year and then sophomore year varsity, if I'm not mistaken? Walk me through that.
Yeah. So freshman year, I ended up coming in, and I'm thinking I'm playing varsity. Go to tryouts. I'm like, I got like I just showcased. I'm just very clear. I think where I'm at. End up being on JV because there was a person ahead of me that people felt was a good ball player, and he was, quite frankly. And I think sometimes what people kind of forget that I like to say baseball is a sport where it's like you can be great, but
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't impact anybody else's performance. For
Mm-hmm.
example, in football, if somebody's in front of you, you line up to block them. Well, if you either you get blocked or you run over him, or you don't get blocked, and
Mm-hmm.
that's clearly indicated on the person that's sitting in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, like if he blocked me, then I clearly didn't get by him. Versus in baseball, it's like no, he threw the ball exactly where he wanted to, but I still hit it. So there's a little bit of a difference there. But coming in as a freshman, I played on JV my freshman year and started from the beginning, played very well. So sophomore year, I came in, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna definitely have a chance to compete for a varsity spot and compete for that job, my position. And that wasn't the case. It was no, you're gonna be back on JV for the beginning, and we think we want to pull you up. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was kind of a situation where I felt like, well, why wasn't I given that opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
compete for the spot? And it wasn't there. So I said, okay, well, I got to play where I'm at. So I played well, ended up getting pulled up to varsity my sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't play a lot at that at my natural position. So then coming into my junior year, the person ahead of me is a senior. I'm like, well, I should definitely be at this spot.
Right.
Junior year, I'm still not at that spot. And I'm like, okay, I understand you have a person that's a senior, he's played, but that doesn't mean I can't play.
Right.
Give me that and give me that same opportunity or keep that same energy there. And ended up playing a little bit my junior year, but not a whole bunch. And that's when I really was kind of like, is this really gonna happen? And I
Mm-hmm.
just figured, I was like, well, that's one coach. I don't need that coach to tell me yes. I need the other coach. So coming into my senior year, I know I'm a starter. Everything. The team isn't playing well, but I'm playing pretty well. And ultimately, that summer, the junior summer and my senior summer were like big summers for me.
Right.
I played so well those summers, and those are where I kind of, I guess, cut my teeth and realized like, oh no, you can play at this level just because somebody else is doing it a different way, or isn't given that same kind of effort or same kind of opportunity doesn't mean you can't make it happen. And I will never forget. I remember after my senior summer, somebody was another individual who went to my school and watched our games. He
Mm-hmm.
said it to my dad, and he was kind of he said to my dad, he was like, "Yo, I didn't know Dondre could play that well." And I'm like, and my dad said back to him like, "Well, y'all didn't give him the opportunity to play that well."
Hello.
And so that's one of the things where it kind of stood out to me. And those summers are kind of what really showed me that I could make it. I could make it and play in college ball. And then and that's kind of the one of the funny stories that happened was when my dad, when that person individual from the school made that comment. It was kind of interesting. I'm like, well, you would have known if you would have gave the man a chance. Like
Right.
a chance isn't, and I tell people too, just quick, a chance in baseball is not giving somebody a pinch hit at the end of a game when you're getting blown out. that is not a chance.
Right.
That's just giving somebody some throwaway minutes. They've
Right.
been sitting around for 2 hours. It's not a chance.
Yep.
A chance is every day in practice, every day in a scrimmage, every day and
Mhm.
consistent over a period of time.
Mhm.
That is an opportunity. And I think the people kind of get those misconstrued. Now, I think they also need to realize what success is in those moments and too, and have that success measure tapered based on the situation. But those are more my thoughts and kind of what happened in the kind of the process for me.
Mhm. All right. So high school we're playing varsity. Senior year, college starts. I remember you were on it when it came to the SAT or ACT. Your boy was not. I was in my freshman year in college. Or no, I was in my sophomore. That's neither here nor there. But I remember being very inspired and impressed by you because you were really on your SAT, your ACT. So knowing you want to play Division 1 baseball, what was
Mhm.
your thoughts? Oftentimes you ended up at FAMU, but like what was your traditional method? Like when you were like really looking at schools, was FAMU really on the list? Was it at the end of
Oh,
the list? How'd you run into it? And then what were your thoughts when you got to FAMU? And like a lot of times there's a negative stereotype on
yeah.
AA Division 1 sports. So
Yeah.
do that.
Oh man, so that's tough. So like the grades is interesting. You say it looked like I was on my SAT and ACT. My scores were not great. They were very much so like a click below average.
Mhm.
Like, and I think one reason why I was is just because in my household, right? Like, I knew I had to take the test, but didn't nobody know how to study for this test. I didn't even know they had classes. So it kind of just happened, right? Like I did the class through school, but I didn't know people were taking classes starting as a freshman to study for this test. I was just doing this like in the class. We take you have like a sophomore summer, they give you like that little 1 month class that everybody takes. That's your prep. That was my prep. So my scores were pretty average, but the way I went about college sports was I sat out and I said, what were the specifics, right? Like I literally wrote them down. I remember I wrote them down. I said, what are the things I want? I said, well, number one, I know I want to play college baseball, and I remember really putting specifically saying I don't want to play professional baseball.
Mm.
And so
All
I
right, touch
knew I
on that
wanted
real
to
quick.
play. What'd
Why
you
why
say?
why did you toss out the professional idea concept?
Man, first of all, like people for first thing why I always felt that way is because I wanted to have a real college experience.
Okay.
And I think that was very important to me where I knew I was dedicated to baseball, but I
Mm,
also knew I wanted to have a real college experience. That's number one. Number two, the other reason why I said I didn't want to play professional baseball was because one, I had to be a little realistic, right? Like I was like, there's a certain amount of realistic and irrational you need. I knew I could play college ball. That was a given. Now, professional, I was like, that's a possibility. I don't know if I can do all that. So that was a little bit of it. But the last reason mainly was because professional baseball sucks. Like, being honest, like the major leagues is great, but outside the major leagues, it's not fun.
right.
You are in the most random cities.
Mm-hmm.
You are riding buses for hours.
Mm,
You are thousands of miles away from home. You can be cut. You can be released at any moment.
mm.
You're in Mississippi, South Mississippi one day.
Lisa. Oh
You get
God.
traded. You might go to Des Moines, Iowa, and
Mm,
then you might end up getting called down, pushed down, or called up to go
mm,
to the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma.
mm.
And that life, I just looked at it and I knew I was like, I don't want that life. Like,
Right. That's real.
I cannot imagine having that life for myself for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the one really, really big reason why I didn't want to play college. Why I didn't want to play professional baseball. So
Okay.
I knew that going into college, and then the last reason too is you don't make any money.
That part. Okay.
Like people forget, like you don't make any money. If you don't get drafted in the first round, you are signing for $1,500 and you're getting paid maybe 20, 30 grand during the season. That's not over the year. That's during the season.
Mm,
So if you don't, what are you going to do those other 8 months,
oh,
6 months?
yeah.
And I just knew that lifestyle was just not appealing to me. I love the game. I don't like the business. I didn't want to be a benefit. What do they say it? I didn't want to be a casualty of the business. I wanted to be a benefactor of the business.
That's right.
And so I knew that. And then going into college, I kind of said those first thing was I wanted to play baseball. Back to that. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to play college baseball. I knew I wanted to play at Division I level.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I said, well, if I'm not gonna play pro ball, I'm gonna have to get a job at some point. So I might as well make it a job I love. So I knew I wanted to work in baseball because I love the game so much, or
Mm.
work in sports because I just love sports. So that was like I knew I needed a good business program to help me get a degree to get a job.
Mm.
And then the last thing I really looked at was I said, all right, I don't want to be close to home.
You did say that. Good God.
I knew I didn't want to be close to home. So whenever I went on the college searches or sites, I always used those three criterias. I was like, all right, I needed to be out of state, I
Mm-hmm.
needed to be a Division I school, and
College.
I needed to have a business program that I know is reputable.
Yep.
And honestly, FAM was not on that list at all.
Ooh,
At
okay.
all.
Listen.
At the time I had going into it my junior year, I had schools like Clemson,
Mhm.
South Carolina, LSU, Miami, Coastal Carolina. Um, who's a couple more? I had a couple more on
You're
there.
Chapel Hill, am I right?
Yeah, Chapel Hill was that. Yeah, I don't know how I missed that one. I felt that's a very good one. That was the number one on the list at the
I
moment.
know.
Chapel Hill going into my
I
junior year of high school. So
know.
that was the list. And
Okay.
then as I started to play, and I knew I could play college ball because I knew when I tested and did all the measurables and stuff, I tested above high school. I
Mhm.
tested at that Division II cut line, like that Division II cut line.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I like to call it. And I was like, I was around there. And I was like, okay, so let's be realistic. Let's be a little realistic. Like, can you play college baseball? The answer is yes, because you have some offers from Division IIIs, Division IIs. But then I was also like, all right, if you're going to step to that Division I level, what are the programs that take players like you? And so I started to do research to understand what programs needed players or took players, one that looked like me, but then two played like me, because that's important.
Absolutely.
So I know I needed that. And so when I started looking at rosters and the combination of out of state rosters and roster history,
Mm,
my academics, my SAT scores, and the business programs, it
mm,
really helped me narrow my search and
mm,
help guide me to schools. And that ultimately kind of pushed me to other schools that were like High Point University. That's how one of the schools FAM got recommended to me. And
mm.
it checked all the boxes.
Who
That's when I
recommended
started,
it?
huh?
Who recommended it?
Honestly, I think one of my cousins, he's my mentor. He mentioned it because I know I knew highly of him because he was kind of like a mentor. I thought he was intelligent my entire life. So when I
Mm,
found out he went to FAM, I was like, huh, let me go look at this. And it hit the criteria. And that's what kind of opened me up to the rest of the HBCUs. And how I started researching and looking at those. And I was like, oh, I can play at this level. It's
mm,
like I was like, they got people who play professional. They have great business programs and educational programs. They're
mm,
not close to home. Huh.
mm.
These on the list. So that's when they got on the list. And then I just started contacting coaches and narrowing it down. And eventually went through some other flipped the quarter, decided to go to FAM, and then just
Okay.
and walked on.
Okay. So you walked on that, which is amazing, and it's not as easy as people make it seem to be. So shout out to you.
Hmm.
So before we get to the coaching carousel that you went through, so to speak, give us your aha moment. I am at a HBCU. Welcome to FAMU. Give us your moment from freshman year. If you were any moment that you remember.
Oh man, the moment I realized the HBCU, I think the moment I realized it was probably orientation. That was probably when that was like the very like pre-school moment when I realized it because one, we were doing orientation. They had the orientation leaders, and I just remember looking at the orientation leaders and being like, "Whoa, everybody here looks like me," and then just being blown away looking at who was the other people that were on campus, if you get what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
then I think the other moment was during freshman week, like welcome week, when they have everybody like everyone starts school, and we call it welcome week at FAM, and they had all these events, and the events were like I just had to say it, like they were catered to me. Like It was all music I liked. It was all music I'd heard of. It was all everybody looked like me, and it was loud. It reminded me so much of literal my family reunions, or just like my family coming to my house, and that's what it reminded me of. So like freshman, I think orientation was the first one, seeing everybody,
Mhm.
and then like going out at night and everybody wanted to do things. I think those were the big moments that I can really remember being kind of crazy.
Mhm.
That were real special.
Okay. So first off, I find it working in admissions. First off, I start to realize like the times students about evolve every year, and it's kind of backwards. So for us, we're in this like, and we're not too far, like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
But like for me, I know my goal was just to graduate college. Didn't know I landed on Morgan because you know hoop dreams. Yeah, not it.
Hmm.
Then to be honest with you, I wasn't the best student, but I wasn't the worst student, and two HBCUs gave me a chance, Hampton and Morgan. So I get there. My goal, I'm just trying to graduate. My mom was like, "If you waste my money, just come on home. You don't no need to waste my money." I'm not thinking about, oh, I gotta get. I want this internship. I want that internship. Then when you get to college, you're trying to figure out ACT, SAT, sports. This is what lines up. This is what lines up, and then you end up taking internships, and then you land right into your job. Now it's like every generation is backwards. Now I want to get the money. I want to get this. So for you, what mindset were you in when you find your dream school,
Mm.
or some people don't say dream school. Some people say the school that I needed. Whatever, however you want to.
Ooh, that's a bar.
Yeah, I needed Morgan.
That's a bar.
Dream at first, but I
It's a
needed.
dream now. I was gonna say when you said
Yep,
that wasn't a dream then
yep,
it was like, oh, this will be cool. And if
yep,
it don't work out, I can transfer. That's
yep,
what I was thinking. But now that it was what I needed. So yes, fair. Go ahead.
yep. So, oh, I'm too lazy. I would transfer wasn't in for me. I was too lazy, and then I was hooked freshman year. After, like you said, after access orientation for us, hooked. But so you get the FAMU. We're gonna get back to baseball in a second. But you get the
Mhm.
FAMU, then the business. The one interesting thing, I don't know if they do it now, but you were the first person that always told me that y'all had to do 3 business internships before you can graduate. I think that's amazing. Most schools it's one, and then that is kind of like real flimsy. But the fact that you had to do 3, that how did that kind of mold you like to your
Oh man.
business regimen? Because you've always been a business mind, whether you realize it or not. But then after you seeing you start your first internship, going through the business program, second internship, like you like elevate all the time. Like, what was your mindset when you found out? Oh, I have to do 3 internships for business.
Well, that was kind of one of the reasons I picked it. I knew I knew personally where I wanted to go was very unique and very difficult to get to.
Right.
So I knew wanting to work in sports was going to be hard. Like day one, I knew it was going to be hard. And
Right.
so I knew I needed to pick a program that was going to be equally hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew so those were the two things that I knew I needed to be uncomfortable. I knew I needed to be
Right.
uncomfortable, and I knew it was going to be hard, so I needed to pick something hard.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons I picked the school. So going into the program, I was mentally kind of like, this is going to be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be surprised if I don't want to say struggle, but you don't like it.
Right. That's real.
And it was more like, do you believe in your vision? And
Mm-hmm.
do you believe in your decision that this is going to help you get and make your vision come true? And so once I got there, it made it a little bit easier when I started to look at things more from a perspective of this is what's going to mold me to give me the best opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
get to where I wanted to go. So it was starting with the end in mind and then backtracking from that end.
Right.
Now, I think one of the few things that I do want to say about the internships and why it's so mandatory and why I love it is because another reason why I picked it was because no, I knew one thing that most students weren't going to have coming out of school was experience.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I just need the experience, one from an internship, but then two, the connections and network from the internship.
Say that again.
I always knew that, like, one of the things I got when I got in the building, I said that once I get in the building, I'm a stay. I'm gonna find a way to stay. Like I'm gonna find a way to stay. Like I was like, you're gonna add value however you can, whether that's with a book or something you learned in the books or something or showing them that you're continuously learning
Mm-hmm.
to improve. that way they'll be willing to give you an opportunity. And so that was the other reason why I picked it, because I knew the internships would give me the most experience, and then that would give me the most that would give me the biggest advantage versus other college students.
Mm,
Not realizing I didn't know I didn't realize in the moment I was going to have to compete with other like grown individuals for jobs.
right.
But I was just trying to think of what would be uncomfortable, what would be hard to prepare me for a hard road, and then what would get me the most experience and give me the biggest network fastest. And that's kind of how I ended up thinking about the program and where it ended up, how it ended up shaping me, and how those internships helped develop me.
That's man, that's phenomenal. So we're gonna switch back. So I find it very interesting when you go through your baseball journey. We're FAMU, we're Division 1. Check, you've already accomplished that goal. Check, you get into college, accomplished that goal. Check, you find the college of business. If I'm not mistaken, you had a coach for a full season, correct? And then,
I never had a coach for a full season. I
ooh,
had a coach for our first coach was there when I
mm-hmm,
walked on during the summer. He
mm-hmm,
had been there for a year before. He was there when I walked on. He then got fired right after Thanksgiving. He
sheesh,
was put on leave, and
mm-hmm,
then and then we had an assistant step up, a position coach step up,
mm-hmm,
and he was the coach from the end of like right after Thanksgiving, so call it December 1st,
mm-hmm.
all the way until probably like the spring. And then during the spring/summer, we got another coach who came in. So I actually had two and I guess three-ish coaches in my 1 year in the program.
So you played for one season or you played for two? Because I know you had to said you had to try out
I
again.
played for one, and I played for one, tried out for the second, and ended up deciding I didn't want to play anymore just because I knew at that point I wanted to be a student. And I was like, this isn't, I'm not. Once they said I was going to try out again, in full transparency, just being realistic, that's the other thing people need to be, is realistic and honest with yourself. I came home for after my freshman year. We had a new coach after being a walk on. He came home. I came home and he was. I talked to him and they were like, "Well, you got all walk ons have to try it again."
Mm-hmm,
And so I was like, "Okay, well, I did it once. I could do it again." I
mm-hmm.
worked, trained all summer, was doing CrossFit and things like that, and then came back for the fall. I remember trying out, and I remember leaving the field and just being like, "Yeah, I'm done.
That's
I don't have anything. I'm good. Like I don't have anything left. I left it all out there."
would you have made the team if, like, let's say you didn't, like, I'm done? Would you have made it or you didn't really?
Honestly, I don't even know because I never followed up.
That's real.
I literally just was like, "I'm done," and I was because I couldn't. It's the emotional toll people forget,
Yeah,
and the kind of the
you're gone
business side
forever.
of it. And this was the other component people forget, and it kind of ties back to what I said earlier. I knew when I played sports, I wanted to be a beneficiary of the business, not a
Ah,
casualty of the business. And at
ah,
that point, I kind of realized like nobody actually on this field really cares about me. I'm another player. I'm a player to them right now. Like,
mhm.
and people kind of forget when you're on a team and a college team, the head coach does not recruit every single player.
Ooh,
A coach on any team does not pick every single player.
mm-hmm.
So some coaches like you, some coaches don't. And for me, I always what rang true and what I loved was I wanted a coach that was gonna understand me. I wanted a coach that was gonna motivate me, a coach that was gonna
Mm-hmm.
mold me, and a coach that was gonna push me.
Mm-hmm.
But once I realized I was not in an environment where where my coaching staff was not gonna do that,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I already did what I wanted to do. Right. Like, regardless of what people say, how the career ended, you can't deny what happened. So I already knew I had played. I was on the team for an entire year. So I was like, well, I'm good. There's no, I'm not doing this again. And so that's kind of how my coaching carousel went. There's a lot of stories that I could tell. And the other reason why I tell people about college sports, I'm like, and the last thing I would say is like, I loved going D1. It was cool, but it was kind of overrated. And they're
That's
like,
real.
why? I'm like, it was overrated because no matter what anybody tells me, I was there waking up 5 a.m. running. I was there 5 a.m. weight lifts. I was there 5 a.m., going to the 5 a.m. workout, going to breakfast with the team, going to class, then coming back in the afternoon to do your hitting, do your BP, do your infield work. I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I have any kind of ring or championship ring to show for it? No. But you know what was real?
Mm-hmm.
That sweat equity that I put in,
Yep.
the blood, sweat, and tears that I put in over the course of my entire baseball career since I was a kid. What was real was those dreams. So it was one of those situations where I had to just realize, like, okay, what are we really doing this for? But ultimately, like, are you doing this for your validation of others or doing this for the validation of yourself? And that was kind of once I realized I had the validation of myself already. I had proved what I set out to prove to myself.
Right.
Why do I need to worry about proving anything to anybody else?
That's real.
Because you can't take away what's done.
What's done? Yep, absolutely.
So that was kind of why, or part of the reason why, where I was just kind of like, no, I'm all right. I'm okay. We can move on now.
Well, shout out to you, man. You did what half of America did not or cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
Play Division One. So,
Yeah.
all right. So we intern at Macy's, then we get a job at Under Armour.
Mm-hmm.
How I know in the beginning you kind of talked about like you already knew you wanted to be on the business side of baseball. How
Right.
did we know that we wanted to land when we look at your resume? We look at planning intern, we look at women's apparel allocation analyst, we look at men's allocation analyst, senior analyst, then we
Yep.
look at a PLM for athletic and team outfitting. How
Yep.
do we wanted to be in the marketing branding of clothing, so to speak? How do we know?
It kind of started on the field. I knew like originally I wanted to be some kind of scientist. I got to science class. I struggled in high school. I was like, all right, that might not work. And that's when I realized, like, all right, what do you like? I love sports. And then I always started to realize, like, when I was watching sports or reading about sports,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know about the deal,
Absolutely.
not the player. Like, I wanted to know about the player. I didn't really necessarily care how he performed. That was great, but I always wanted to know about the deal behind it because there was money associated with it. And then the other thing I always realized too, I was like, well, if they paying these players this kind of money, what they making in the front office? Or
Hello.
what they doing? Like, they not sweating, they not out here running doing none of that, but they getting paid. So it kind of pushed me down the path of like exploring that sports and entertainment space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I knew I wanted to do it. And so when I went into college, I knew I wanted to work for either a Major League Baseball organization in the front office, or work for a sports brand. And
Mm-hmm.
so knowing those two areas and field like industries are kind of like next to each other,
Yep.
that's kind of how I pinpointed that. And then I figured, I said, all right, well, I got 4 years to figure out a way to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I like numbers. So anything with numbers, we can do it. Like we can play with some numbers and talk like finance and things like that all day. That's real business stuff. So that's why I was like, all right, well, any role that has to do with numbers in those business in those two industries that are kin to each other
Mm-hmm.
are what I want to go for.
Okay.
So I figured out, I said, all right, well, I tried multiple years to get to Under Armour, get to Nike, get to Adidas, get to Puma, get to Reebok, get to the Orioles, the Yankees, the Nationals, the Major League Baseball organization, the NFL, the Commanders, excuse me, the Ravens, the Tampa Bay Rays. Like, I tried all these different organizations, didn't get anything. And I said, all right, well, you need to reapproach. You need to adjust your approach.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to win. The goal is not to win your way. And
Say that
so
again. You know, you gotta rewind that. You can't just skip over that one. Say that again.
the goal is to win, not to win your way.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
Sometimes it's just a little nugget people forget. Sometimes
Yep.
people forget, like, I want to get to A to B. I didn't say I want to get A to Z, excuse me. I want to get A to Z. I didn't say I wanted to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G all the way through Z. I said I wanted to get A to Z. That's
Yeah.
not the same thing. So sometimes you can skip A to M to Z.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes you can go C, A, Z. The point
Mm-hmm.
was to get to Z, not to go straight through. And
I
so
love
that's when I thought about that, and that's when I realized, like, well, Macy's recruits at Under Armour, recruits at FAMU in the school
Mm-hmm.
of business. That's a relationship. That's a
Mm-hmm.
network that I can already tap into and use. So I tapped into that, and once I tapped into there, I said, well, Macy's is like the big. When I googled the name, I looked at the retailers on the retailers list. Like, you can Google any industry, and they'll tell you the biggest players in that industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw Macy's was in the top 5. I was like, whoa, Macy's make a lot of money. I said,
Mm-hmm.
they important. And I was like, well, Macy's does business with Nike, Adidas, Puma, Under Armour, and all these different brands. I
Mm-hmm.
said, so if I can get to Macy's, I'm pretty sure somebody in that building is gonna know somebody in those other buildings to help me get to where I really want to go.
Absolutely.
And so I said, all right, let me get this Macy's. So I went to Macy's with the mission and the vision of either securing an opportunity directly from them or securing an opportunity indirectly from them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where ultimately I ended up getting some contacts from there that I knew that knew at Under Armour, but I also got the resume builder. So when I went back for the Under Armour internship, I already had an experience. I got selected, and then I remember day one saying, "Well, if you let me in the building, I'm not leaving until I feel like it."
That's good.
So that was my mission. I said, "Yo, you got 10 weeks of somebody paying you to be in their building and figure out some way to impress somebody for them to ask you to come back."
Absolutely.
And that's what I did. And I fortunate enough to ask to come back. And then for
Okay.
to fast forward as a career track, I knew I was in planning and allocation. I was like, all right, this is cool. I haven't actually done anything in the sports industry. So this is a great opportunity to come in here and learn and do what you need to do. But
Mhm.
then I said, in that time while I'm learning, figure out what you want to do for the rest of your career.
That's good.
Figure out what it is you want to do for the next 20. You figured out the last 5 to 8, figure out the next 20. Just
Mhm.
what it is. And I said, okay, well, I really like athletes. Like I love sports. Back to my love of sports and being an athlete myself. I understand what it's like to go to the field and work
Mhm.
and be like The Rock says, the 54th man on the roster. That was me.
Right.
And so I realized I said, all right, well, I want to get close to the athletes. And so that's when I realized I started looking at different roles and learning one about the business, but then two, learning about what roles interact with the athletes, what roles really interact with the accounts. And that's when I kind of realized I wanted to get into the merchandising slash like product side of the business because you get to talk to the athletes, but you still get to do that business strategy side and, well, again, make the product, but figure out how to sell it in, connect the dots with the marketing team and things like that. And so that's kind of how I've gotten and how I've thought about my path. It's the number one thing I always tell people is it should be nonlinear. It
Absolutely.
should not be a straight line.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
Because that represents the adventure of his. Yeah, I love that. So we're coming down to the stretch. Really quickly, would you say what would if you could answer this really quickly? What anybody? Let's say we're gonna go back real quick, but it's gonna set us up for a pivot, right? No
mhm.
pun intended. So if anybody you had to retrial for the baseball team, you were there partially. That was your reason for being there. What kept you from transferring or coming back closer? Like was it you already put your roots at FAMU regardless of the sports aspect? I'm too far in the game, or you saw the bigger vision. What kept you from transferring?
One, it was seeing the bigger vision. I knew I had a good program that I felt that I picked, and
Mhm.
I picked this program to prepare me for what I wanted to do, which was not professional sports. So I said, well, you can transfer and redo it, or you can believe in that choice. That
Mm,
was one. And then two, there were some other factors in terms of like me having my roots down, already being down there for a year, already have credits not transferring. And then ultimately the biggest blessing I ever had was my parents saying, like, yo, we'll figure this out. Like I know it's expensive and you aren't gonna be on a scholarship like we thought you would be this year, but we'll figure it out.
that's right.
So that was the other motivating factor because it was kind of like, well, dang, they're willing to take a risk on me. You gonna prove somebody right or you gonna prove them wrong? One of the is your choice is yours. And I just said, all
Yeah.
right, well, I got to prove them right. So those are the big reasons why I decided to stay.
Yeah, and then real quick, people don't understand. A lot of times, people have so much pride about HBCUs. One, because of the people believed in you, or you literally bought into the vision. Like, I mean, like literally bought.
Money bought into the vision.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then you get your money back. I mean, you get your investment. You get your return tenfold.
yeah,
You have
yes,
professors
you
that care
do.
about you, community cares about you, the culture. Like, it's just I call it the 4 year incubator. It's the 4 years we get to be in the majority. Don't have to worry about it, but we're still getting prepared for being the minority at the same time.
100%.
So, as we continue to go down to the end of the wire of this, 2020, the creation of, at the time, Yon Sports Performance LLC, right?
Yep.
How a lot of times people will leave away or walk away with sports, leaving what they learned there, and they don't kind of give back. Not to say it's a selfish reason for everybody. Some people, I don't have time. Some people, I'm done with sports. Sometimes I just don't like. It's not. I'm not a good coach. I don't want to coach. I'm tired of.
Mm-hmm.
How? When did you know that? When did you start to realize, like, hey, I could actually coach people? I will want to do this, and I see the bigger picture, and I want to sow into the community, but I also want to make better baseball players. Like, when did you get there?
So my mentor at Under Armour, I was struggling at Under Armour a little bit. So I was struggling at Under Armour at the time, and my mentor knew I was trying to move into product. She knew I wanted to get into product and merchandising. And I went to her son's baseball game, and I was watching because I knew he was having some trouble. And so she was like, yeah, he's thinking about quitting and this and the third. And I was like, okay, well, all right, I'll go to it. Like, she just invited me to the game. So I went to it was a practice. I went to the practice, and I looked at the practice and I saw him play, and I was like, that's not a bad baseball player. And I started talking to her, and I just started asking her some questions. I said, hey, is the coach, I was like, is the coach doing this, this, and this? She said, yeah. I said, is he the only black baseball player on the team? She said, yeah. I said, does he get a short? I was like, does he play this position? She said, yeah. I said, when he plays that position, does he get a short leash? And she said, yeah. I was like, oh, okay, that reminds me of me. So when I went to practice and I could see it, I was like, well, let me see if he's actually talented. And I look and I could see him, like, that's a kid who's played baseball at a pretty high level since he was a little kid. I could tell.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started talking to her, and I just said, hey, like, yeah, I think he's getting the short end of the stick, but I also think this is why he's not getting any better. They're doing this wrong in practice. And I'm like, he got a position over there. And I just start listing things that's like not, I don't want to say not right, but things they need to do better and could do better at this age. And
Mm-hmm.
she just said to me, she was just like, well, are you going to sit here and keep going? Are you going to coach? And so I kind of was like a put up or a shut up moment where I was like, well, all right, well, you see these mistakes, you're going to do something about it. Like, and she kind of called me out on it. So I started coaching her son, and then he started to play a little bit better. And then I would go to practice and I see they still doing things wrong in practice. And I said, well, if I'm going to keep, either I got to stop coaching him because he's not going to get any better because they practice is bad, or I'm going to just go coach the team and help them with practice. And so I said, all right, well, I think the positive thing to do is to coach the team. So I started helping coach the team. And once I kind of realized that, I realized how much I missed the natural, the nature of the game, and just, I had a knack for it. And then I figured, I said, all right, well, maybe I'll just start a little business as like a little hobby, because it was COVID. Like, not to say I had a bunch of free time, because I still was working, but I figured, I said, you know what? Like, I've been looking at all these business podcasts. I work for a business at Under Armour. Why not? Just do it as a hobby. Like, fine. You're making a couple bucks here and there, but ultimately just do it as a hobby. So I filed all my paperwork, and I started coaching, and I started doing better, and people kind of see me. And then, so one kid on the team came to me, and said, like, would you work out with me? Would you work with me? I was like, yeah, that's not a problem. Just get here. And then what really happened was, how I started charging people was, one, people kept offering me. And then two, I started driving so much, I was just like, I can't keep this. I need something to pay for this gas. Like, something's got to pay for this gas money. So like, I just said to him, like, hey, we can keep working, but like, I can't keep making these trips with gas and like COVID and all this other stuff. Like, we can't. I need, just shoot me a couple dollars. And I said, all right. And I saw him get better. And then as I started coaching people coaching at different parks and coaching